No matter who wins this election, we are building a movement to transform society, to put the political and economic power back in the hands of working people.
In the fourth largest economy in the world, families can afford rent, groceries, or childcare. All the while, corporations bring in record profits.
That's not an accident. That's the billionaire system working exactly as designed.
Meanwhile, we bear the burden of all the system's failures.
AI displacing our jobs, climate disasters intensifying, and an expanding war economy pushing us closer to World War III.
But when we demand solutions, we're told there's no money.
We know this is a lie. The two-party system is rigged to protect the interests of the rich and powerful.
The question is, what will we do to change it?
From the day that we started our campaigns, we said it was about more than just winning votes. No one person or one election can defeat the billionaires or corporate power alone. It's about building a new system where people hold political power. It's about building socialism.
In the last year, we have seen the violence of the billionaire ruling class against our immigrant communities and against working class people standing up for our basic rights.
But every time they've turned up the pressure, so have we.
When they attacked Iran and forced working people to foot the bill, who took to the streets?
When ICE targeted our communities, who showed up in defense?
When insurance giants abandoned fire survivors, who fought back?
We did. Not the Democrats, not the Republicans, the people.
Because that's what changes society. It's the mass movement, the mass participation of people, organized at every level, a people confident in saying, this is what we want, and we will not accept anything less.
Trump attacks our rights from every direction, but these problems started long before him.
And even with a Democratic majority in California, our lives have not gotten easier. Only a true socialist alternative can stop the billionaire agenda.
That's why we proudly ran as candidates with the Peace and Freedom Party, the only socialist party on the ballot. Because we need an independent movement of working class people at the ballot box. But replacing a few bad apples isn't enough. We need to continue to build socialism inside and outside of the election cycle every single day.
Thank you to everybody who supported our campaigns, to anybody who donated, volunteered, to everybody who registered Peace and Freedom Party and voted socialist.
We traveled across California, not just in big cities,
but rural areas that have been ignored by both major parties.
We gathered over 50,000 signatures to get on the ballot, eliminating the filing fees.
Our campaigns brought together thousands of volunteers, knocked on tens of thousands of doors, and reached hundreds of thousands of voters.
The future will be what we make it, and this campaign is an invitation. Join the socialist movement, organize with us, continue this fight past the primary and past the general election. Together, we will keep fighting to build a California for the people, not the billionaires.
All right, welcome everyone and good evening. Thank you for joining our Vote Socialist California statewide webinar. We are super excited to celebrate these campaigns with you and to talk about the next steps to build socialism and win a California for the people, not the billionaires. My name is Sonika. I'm a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I'm based in the Bay Area. And I'm also a proud registered member of the Peace and Freedom Party. And I've been volunteering over the last several months with our Vote Socialist campaigns. It's the day after the primary election in California and votes are still being counted, but the fight does not end here. The ballot box was never our destination. To stop Trump and the billionaire agenda, working people need a vehicle to fight beyond elections. We can't wait until the general election in November or until 2028. We need to build an independent socialist movement every day, one that will guarantee our people healthcare, put an end to ICE terror for good, and stop wars abroad. That movement is growing every single day, and the results of this election are proof that Californians are hungry for that alternative. Tonight, we're going to hear from some of our statewide candidates on what comes next in the fight for socialism. Before I hand it over to our all-star lineup of speakers, I want us to take stock of what we've built together. We brought over 4,000 volunteers into this movement toward the close of the campaign. We knocked on over 40,000 doors across the whole state, and we connected with over 45,000 registered PFP, Peace and Freedom Party voters by phone. We also sent out over 22,000 mailers to voters in Fresno, Kern, San Joaquin, Imperial County, and parts of Riverside. And by that measure, we already won. So shout out to all the volunteers on this call. You helped make this possible. You helped working people to see that politicians not funding our needs or solving the affordability crisis is not an inevitability. It is a choice made by both major parties and by the billionaires that back them. They've been telling us that working people don't want to organize, but you helped prove them wrong. Just a quick housekeeping note. We will have a short Q&A at the end, so please use the Q&A function to enter your questions, and we will have someone compiling them, and the candidates will answer some of those questions. With that, let's start the program. I'm excited to introduce our first speaker, organizer, social worker, and our esteemed socialist candidate for governor, Ramsey Robinson. Please help me welcome Ramsey.
Hey, what is up, California, and wherever y'all are tuning into? Well, to get right to it, we knew from the very beginning that running in this election cycle was about something bigger than winning votes for our campaign. So when people have been asking me now that the election is over, what are you going to do? I tell them I ain't going anywhere. I'm going to keep building the movement for socialism because long before this 2026 election, I joined the Party for Socialism and Liberation because I realized that the only solution to racism, sexism, poverty, and living a dignified life is to wage the biggest fight of all, and that fight is against the corporate billionaire class. And not just that, to replace it with a system where the interests of working people are at the forefront. And this is the definition of socialism. So our campaign sought to bring real, tangible solutions, socialist solutions that are entirely achievable right now. The means to transform California for the people exists right now. The policy ideas exist right now. The only difference is that the lack of political will to act on these solutions. And this is demonstrated by both parties within the two-party system. We used our campaign to expose the realities created by the two-party system and speak to the issues concerning the people from all parts of the state. We wanted to raise the stakes during this election cycle to make socialism a real factor in California politics. And I know we succeeded because all of you right here are in the Zoom room ready to take the next steps to build something bigger than the June 2nd primary. I'm getting ahead of myself. We took socialism from big cities to small towns, in urban areas and rural areas, from LA, Bay Area, shout out, Fresno, Fontana, Modesto, Bakersfield, Palmdale, Compton, Stockton, West Oakland, East Oakland, Bayview, shout out, East Palo Alto, San Diego, Sacramento, and more. And especially in the small towns and rural areas where people often said to us, thank you for making the time to come out here because no politician ever does. But our goal has always been and is to activate and empower all working people across California that have been left behind, the disenfranchised and completely ignored by this system, and to let them know that our conditions are not because of our personal failures, but a system working exactly how it is designed, and that they should join us in our pursuit to transform society. The truth is, no single politician, no matter what they promise you, can actually make these transformations alone. It requires the active participation of people of California to make these policies a reality. Along the campaign trail, people understandably ask me, Ramsey, why not run as a Democrat? You'll have a better chance of winning as they do. That's what they say. But the answer is really simple, and I think we know this now, y'all. The Democratic Party, at the end of the day, serves billionaire corporate interests. And there's no amount of reforming that will change that fact. And y'all, I'm old enough to witness how much the Democrats promise us change election cycle after election cycle, only to capitulate at the very moment we need them to fight. And this is by design. A party that works for the corporate class and the corporate billionaires will never vote its own power away. And that's why we stand firm in our principles and our politics, because we're serious when we say that we are building a California for the people. You heard me say it a million times, not the what, not the billionaires. And that requires building an entirely independent apparatus, one that's accountable to working people and working class interests. And the media worked very hard to deem us not viable. But we have to ask, like, under what standards? Are the Democrats viable? Are the Republicans viable? Tom Steyer had the billions to pay off TV, radio, and media. Becerra had the backing of Democrats and the giant corporations and companies like Chevron. But we had the people behind us, like we just saw. We had the 4,000 volunteers, nearly 2,000 unique donors. We knocked on 42,000 doors, eliminated $30,000 in filing fees by getting 51,000 petitions, and purely on our ability to mobilize with dedication and enthusiasm our volunteer base alone. We spent our hard-earned donations and went to cities and towns to hear about the real conditions that are ignored by both corporate parties. We wanted to activate those who the corporate class relies on to be abstentionists in these races and convince them that their concerns matter and that when we act together, we can make a difference. This is so much harder than just capitulating to the corporate class, the capitalist class, because we are determined to keep building and keep fighting for the future that we deserve. So why the Peace and Freedom Party? Well, Peace and Freedom was born out of struggles like this, from the anti-war movement and the Black liberation movement of the 60s, as a response to the Democrats who continued to capitulate to pro-war candidates at the expense of genuinely anti-war, anti-racist candidates. So how, in the face of mass resistance and uprising, could the Democrats not listen to their supposed base? The answer is and always will be the same. They serve the interests of the corporate class, not the interests of us, of working people. As working people, that we suffer from the increasing affordability crisis, now sharpened with the war in Iran, the Democratic politicians that run California have done nothing to relieve the burden from our backs. We shouldn't have to foot the bill for the crises of capitalism and the recklessness of US foreign policy. One of the ways that we can fight for a transformation of society is to build this independent electoral instrument that can take on corporate-owned parties, a ballot access party that is the true expression of the mass movement. And we know that people are hungry for this, and the evidence is right there. Peace and Freedom Party is the fastest growing political party in California. But the decisive factor for how we win political power for our class doesn't rest within the confines of the electoral politics alone. If we think about all the gains that we working folks, we oppressed people have made in our society, the Voting Rights Act, reproductive justice, labor rights, desegregation, this was only possible when a majority of people organize and mobilize around these issues to make the demands clear that society will stop running business as usual so long as these horrible conditions we live continue. In other words, when working people get activated and assert our collective power, change happens. And at the same time, if we don't keep up that pressure, all of these rights will get rolled back. And we've seen that happen too with the Voting Rights Act, with women's rights. So unfortunately, we saw this play out already in our lifetime. And this is why fighting for this or that reform is actually not enough. The only way that we can sustain these reforms for good is when we get to call the shots, when the political power is in the hands of the working people. And again, that is socialism. This is why our work here doesn't end on June 2nd. Our project to build a socialist future must happen in all arenas, in the ballot box, in our neighborhoods, in our workplaces, wherever our people are, we have a chance to activate them to join our movement. Beyond this election, we plan to build PFP chapters all across the state so that we can build an independent socialist ballot access party capable of entering all electoral races, big or small. And of course, like I said at the beginning of this, I'm also a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation, which seeks to build an organization capable of intervening in all areas of struggle, to build a vehicle for socialist transformation of society, and to activate people to be a part of this project that we're building. A project that seeks to win political power of the working class once and for all. And I hope you join us because this is just the beginning.
Thank you so much, Ramsey. Your campaign has truly shown us that winning isn't just about one election. It's about building that movement in every corner of the state. I know I've learned a lot from being in the movement side by side with Ramsey and all of the other candidates, and we're all inspired to keep organizing because this is just the beginning. Next, I'd love to introduce our next speaker, a school bus driver, Peace and Freedom Party state officer, president of her union, and our socialist candidate for state controller, Megan Adams. Please welcome Megan.
So thanks everyone for being here. Thanks, Annika. And thank you, Ramsey, for talking about the legacy of Peace and Freedom Party. And I'm going to repeat some of the things he said because you know what? It's worth repeating to make sure that we remember. But for those that don't know, I've been an elected officer of Peace and Freedom Party for about 10 years now. And what we've been building is an authentic, independent electoral home for those that are sick and tired of the Democratic Party selling out our interests for the sake of preserving a broken system, and to fight for a future that meets the needs of people in California. As Trump and the billionaires have levied countless attacks on our people, it's become clear that relying on the Democratic Party to fight the ultra-right takeover of democracy, it's ultimately a dead end. And what I've seen while traveling around California, talking to thousands of you, is that you're ready to fight. And you're not willing to just wait for the next election. You want to fight now. And I know that's why you're all here today. So I wanted to give some context to this little known controller race. And so as Ramsey said, nearly 60 years ago, an entire generation of young people decided they were ready to fight. That witnessing the brutality and lies about Vietnam had transformed this generation forever. And they were ready to build a real alternative for working class people to express that voice. So when we fast forward to 2023, the genocide in Palestine did not start that year. But what has happened over the last 2.5 years has broken this struggle into the consciousness of people in the US. The mass movement for Palestine has changed the narrative forever. And the mask came off the Democrats. Even as millions poured into the streets to demand an end to the genocide and an arms embargo, Democratic politicians at every level continued to spout canned talking points and take trips to Israel. Joe Biden approved billions of dollars in munitions shipments to Israel. But massive non-committed movements emerged from disaffected voters. And the only socialist pro-Palestine candidate for president, Claudia de la Cruz, garnered a historic number of volunteers and votes nationwide. And that's the context under which we launched this campaign for California State Controller, because we wanted to continue making Palestine a red line on the ballot. And our biggest accomplishment was that we politicized this race. The state controller race flies under the radar, with the same status quo establishment Democrat gets elected every year. And they quietly sign off on checks and tax cheats for the billionaires and corporations. And none of us even knew that this was happening. But we ran as socialists and talked to tens of thousands of people about this office because it's one that we could actually use to fight for working people. We can divest from Israel, from war, and from fossil fuels. We can audit police departments that collaborate with ICE, and we can stop corporate landlords from buying up our housing in bulk. We can use our platforms to raise the issues of war and destruction because working people in California and across the US don't want this blood on our hands, and nor do we want our loved ones being sent to fight in endless wars. As we speak, the US continues its aggression on Iran. It continues its stranglehold on the Cuban economy through life-threatening sanctions, and all the while continuing to hold Venezuela's head of state in jail for no reason. The reckless foreign policy of the Republicans and the Democrats plundered trillions of our tax dollars. And meanwhile, working people in California continue to suffer through deteriorating living conditions. But in the Peace and Freedom Party, our aim is to use every race possible to raise the issues that affect working class people the most and bring solutions that meet the scale of the problem. We want to make socialism a real factor in California politics. And if you're down with that, then we urge you to join Peace and Freedom Party. You can support us if you haven't already by registering for Peace and Freedom and get active in chapters across the state. And if there aren't chapters in your area, then you can help us start one. We want to build chapters in all 58 counties in the state. So as is on there, we have chapters in the following counties: San Francisco, Alameda, Sonoma, Sacramento, Orange County, Los Angeles, Ventura, San Bernardino, and San Diego. You've probably also heard about our statewide races, but during this primary, we were also endorsed other races as well, including Los Angeles City Attorney, Aida Shuri, Congressional District 24, Helena Pascuela, Congressional District 37, John Parker, State Senate District 8, Linda Roberts, and San Diego County Supervisor District 5, Sasha Miller. And we have an ongoing mayoral campaign in the city of El Cajon in San Diego County, where Alexander Kraft, who is a labor organizer and educator, and Kevin Aiken, a retired steelworker and the state chair of Peace and Freedom Party, they will also be on the ballot in November for District 63. And while we're getting ready for the November election and the 2028 general election, we will keep organizing until our movement grows bigger and stronger. I've been in the movement since 2003, when I witnessed our government declare war on Iraq based on lies and flew to DC to protest. And just a few years later, I ended up joining the Party for Socialism and Liberation to fight for socialism every day. And in this time, I've seen the consciousness of working people change, and especially in the last years. And I can feel it when I talk to all of you. We must seize on this moment to build the movement for socialism in the ballot box, in the streets, and wherever working people are. It's no coincidence that Peace and Freedom Party is already one of the fastest growing electoral parties in the state, much faster than the Democrats and Republicans. The corporate-owned media, the billionaire ruling class, has tried to deem us not viable. But on what terms? For us, viability is determined by the ability to organize our class in the hundreds of thousands to millions into action. And that's what we aim to do until we win the full transformation of society, a socialist future for generations to come. So it's been a real honor and a pleasure to serve as your candidate for state controller. I'm going to keep organizing and fighting, and I hope you join me too.
Give it up for Megan, everybody. Let's keep those emojis coming. Love to see the love. Thanks, Megan, for reminding us that elections don't stand apart from what we build in the streets and in our communities in the movement every day. Because what we build shifts the balance in politics at the local, state, and national level, just like we've seen with Palestine. So now is also a good opportunity to register to vote under the Peace and Freedom Party if you haven't already. The link has been placed in the chat. And you can help build the PFP wherever you are. We have those chapters that were listed and county central committees all across California. So you can sign up to find your closest chapter, or you can help us build one. Next, I'd like to invite up environmental science teacher, United Teachers of Los Angeles member, and our socialist candidate for insurance commissioner, Lalo Vargas.
Thank you for the intro, Sonica. Thank you to everyone who is spending their Wednesday evening with us. I love seeing the enthusiasm coming through the chat. You all have great questions, so definitely keep them coming. And I really want to take a moment to thank every single supporter, every volunteer, every person who put their time, their energy, of course, their vote, but also their trust into this campaign. Because of that work that not just us, the candidates did, but what you all did, this campaign did something truly historic. What my campaign was able to do was to introduce the demand for public property and casualty insurance, and we helped it go mainstream. Now, I didn't run for insurance commissioner because I woke up one day and I was like, you know what? I'm going to be the next insurance commissioner. I didn't come from a background with the insurance industry, nor does anyone in my family work for the insurance industry. I learned about the insurance industry the same way that most working class people do, which is by living under a system where all of us are one accident or one illness or one fire or one disaster away from financial ruin, where one of those things can push us over the edge. And I saw one of those crises firsthand when a big part of LA was devastated in the fires last year. Families, including some of my colleagues at work, were losing their homes. People lost their neighborhoods, their stability, and people who had paid into insurance for years discovered that the coverage that they were promised didn't actually protect them. And these insurance companies were essentially pocketing their premiums and making out like bandits. While the state failed to respond with the urgency and the scale that people actually needed, and the insurance industry protected its profit, who was it that was on the ground daily? It was the people, cleaning up the destruction, distributing supplies, food, clothing, all of the necessities, filling in the gaps that our government wasn't willing to do. And that's because anytime there's a disaster under our capitalist system, people organize and they mobilize, they come together. All of LA came to a stop to help out our neighbors. And in the weeks after the fires, community members affected by the Eaton fires specifically began to organize, and they formed a committee called the LA Fire Survivors Committee. They gathered together to outline their list of demands to the federal government for immediate action. And this is an important step, coming together, saying what it is that we want to see. But we also know that making demands isn't the same thing as winning them. We want to actually win demands. We want to build real power if we want to do that. And that's why we knew going into this fight for the insurance commissioner role that the fight has to be about something bigger. It has to transfer this kind of community organizing into a broader political struggle. And we have to take the fight against the billionaire class to the electoral stage and continue to organize our people's aspirations, channel their anger, their frustrations, and their grief into a shared socialist vision for society. And, there's no shortcuts to this. The victory of one candidate doesn't make that possible. It doesn't change the nature of the whole system. Capitalism doesn't stop being capitalism just because one socialist wins office. Otherwise, the election of Mamdani, New York would have done that already, but it hasn't yet. One election isn't going to undo a private insurance market that's built to enrich its shareholders. But you know what can do that? You know what's more powerful than the private insurance lobby, than the private insurance industry? It's the people. And elections give us the opportunity to demonstrate that neither of the two major parties represent the interests of everyday people, while we also present an alternative for how things could be if working people were given the chance to be in power, and to bring people together who are ready to fight beyond election day to actually make those changes real and concrete. Some of you may know this, but this is actually my second time running for office. Back in 2024, I ran for Los Angeles City Council. I was running as a socialist city council member for District 14. That race was a little bit different because it was born out of scandal. There was 3 city council members and a prominent labor leader that were caught on tape in a racist tirade against the Black and Indigenous Oaxacan communities. And that whole meeting, they were actually plotting on how they were going to gerrymander the city of LA to dilute Black and Brown voting power. Kevin De Leon is the name of the council member who was on that tape, who refused to resign. And he was the only one who refused to do so. And he represented a district that was actually at the heart of the eviction crisis and the homelessness crisis in our city. And we could have treated this campaign like a normal campaign. We could have just parroted what all the other candidates in the race were saying, which is vote for us because the incumbent is corrupt and he's racist. That stuff was true, but that would not have gone far enough because that scandal, just like the whole system and the crises that we have, are not just about one bad apple. It's about a political system where working class Black, Brown, immigrant, and tenant communities are treated as political bargaining chips. So that time we ran a socialist campaign, independent from the major political parties, as Peace and Freedom Party, to prove that you don't have to compromise on community leadership, on representation, and on your working class values. And that time around, we knocked on over 10,000 doors in neighborhoods that most politicians never visit. Or if they do visit, it's because they want your vote or they want a photo op. And our program immediately spoke to the community members in that district. We listened to tenants facing evictions, to families being priced out, to communities being displaced by greedy developers. We actually came across a row of businesses, small businesses, and also tenants that lived in the same building who were being basically they were being evicted by this developer called the Tao Corporation. And this one corporation was going to kick out dozens of families that had been living in the same place for decades. And throughout that campaign, throughout the Claudia and Karina campaign, what became clear was that those connections that we made, the struggle that we built didn't end on election day. The relationships that we built, the community leaders who stepped forward, and the confidence that people gained to make their demands, that's what it was about. And even to this day, some of the people that were volunteering and supporting our on-the-ground efforts with our Vote Socialist California campaigns, many of them we met because of these electoral interventions that we made. All throughout, we're not simply trying to win office. We want to build power. And many candidates enter communities during the election season. They ask for stories, they ask for votes. They'll take pictures at churches or with babies, at schools, at union halls. You've seen it. They go to disaster sites, and then what happens? They disappear until the next campaign. They get elected and you never hear from them again, or they don't get elected and then they just disappear. And they treat working class communities like their backdrop. That's not why we run. We have a completely different outlook and goal for why we run these campaigns. Because for us, there's really no gap between the election and the mass movement. There's no pause between the campaign and the struggle. There's no such thing as an off season when we're trying to fight for working class power and ultimately for socialism. And we know that one candidate can't change the system, but the decisive factor is always going to be the people. So this time around, when I ran for insurance commissioner, they asked us, can one insurance commissioner build a public insurer? And we had to answer honestly, no. Not one single politician can undo the private market alone. No elected official can single-handedly deliver the scale of reform that working people need. And if they claim to do that, then they're overpromising. But organized people can force open the possibilities that the two-party system continues to call impossible. Major reforms have never been gifts from generous politicians handed to us from above. They've been won through pressure, through organization, through mass movements. And politicians, they really do respond when people make it impossible for them not to. And that's why we build both outside and inside the elections. A mass movement outside the system creates the pressure. It turns up the heat. An elected official inside the system who's accountable to that movement can help carry the fight into the institutions that currently serve the rich. And one last thing, I want to be very clear about what we mean by co-optation, because we saw it happen in this campaign. When those in power see a movement that's gaining energy or they see a demand that's gaining momentum, a lot of times they don't want to defeat it directly. What they will do is they will absorb it. They will introduce watered down versions of our demands. And then they'll promote candidates with those watered down demands who sound more realistic, more polished, more electable. They take our language, soften our politics, and then guide people back into the same system, the same two-party system that created the crisis in the first place. We saw that in this race because before this campaign, no one else was talking about Altadena, about fire survivors, about how people are underinsured all over the state, or about how the only real alternative to the private insurance market is public insurance. Once we were the ones to force the issues into the debate, all the others shifted their messaging. And I know it sometimes it's hard to stomach, like, oh, it feels bad. I mean, I'm a teacher and I see the plagiarism that some of the other candidates do, but this isn't a reason to retreat. This is proof that our movements matter. So once again, our aim isn't just to win office or to win elections. Our aim is to transform society. That means building politics every single day, not just when there's a campaign, not just when it's November or the primary. It means becoming leaders in our own communities, organizing tenants, supporting disaster survivors, building committees, joining workplace fights wherever you are, challenging landlords, confronting corporations, and refusing to let politicians speak for us without being accountable to us. That's what we're building with Peace and Freedom Party. And in between elections, that's what we build with the PSL. We don't need to wait until 2028 because the work starts right now. The movement for socialism is going to be built inside and outside the election cycle. And we have to keep running, keep putting a dent and dealing blows to the system, just like we did with these campaigns. We run so that we can organize the people to build our confidence, our clarity, and our power. And long after the ballots are counted, we're going to keep fighting because our goal is bigger than any one office. No politician is going to save us, but together, organized and unafraid, solo el pueblo salva al pueblo. The people will save the people. Thanks, everyone.
Let's give it up for Lalo, everybody. Let's keep that love coming. Thank you, Lalo, for talking about how critically important it is that we build the movement both inside and outside of elections and resist co-optation by talking to working people every single day about what we are fighting for. Because we run to amplify issues like co-optation and the other contradictions of capitalism and the capitalist system. We want to bring people to a different conclusion, that we need an independent working class party of our own. Our next and final speaker is the Vice President of the United Educators of San Francisco and our candidate for Superintendent of Public Instruction, Frank Lara. Let's give it up for Frank, everybody.
Hola, muchos saludos. Good evening, everyone. Again, thank you so much for joining us. It is so important that the day after the election, we host this forum. For those of you who have been following us, the Vote Socialist campaign since the beginning and almost a year ago, you remember how we said that the outcome isn't just about the number of votes, but the organization we built and the foundations that we have set that stay after the election. And now we're here, listening to the amazing speeches from all the candidates and the politics, how they intertwine in the electoral arena, but also more importantly in the people's movement. A year ago, and I know it's been a year because it shows up in my photo timeline, I had comrades introduce themselves to take videos in my house to talk about the program that we were just about to launch and the whole campaign that was launched on Juneteenth. And those in just at that started the conversation. Chats were set up to discuss how to build up a political program, right? Committees were set up to discuss coordination, social media, campaign managers. And then came the house parties, then came the campaign events, came the videos, the interactions. And it has been a year. And looking back at it, I am not the same. And neither are you. And I'm not the same because I experienced, for example, at Porterville, you know, family from us, from comrades who opened up their house and hosted our very, like, what felt to me was my first Vote Socialist event. And I experienced how loving parents who were so proud of their daughters were sitting patiently listening to why we should end capitalism and vote socialist. And I remember being so inspired by that meeting and heading then to San Diego, where I met a PTA parent that introduced the campaign, saying that the anger she saw of the injustice her children were facing, that all children were facing by the robbing of public education, made her commit herself to the Peace and Freedom Party, to Vote Socialist. And I remember sitting being like, as soon as you piss off a PTA parent, you won when they're on your side. Or going to Ventura, for example, and being sent from carne asada to carne asada. And if you've ever been at a carne asada, nothing brings you together closer than a carne asada. And seeing a strong community shortly after, these strong, courageous people raided and intimidated by the federal government. Yet they were such humble, kind people sharing food, trying to live a better life when I joined them. Or the multiple visits to Los Angeles. And I gotta say, I've never seen socialism look so cool than visiting LA uh, on an evening event where everybody looked great and everybody was presenting again a whole young crowd of hopeful people, making sure that people saw themselves in the elections, that people participated in these elections. Or when visiting UCLA and hearing the stories from the courageous students who were their own, these are the students with the highest degrees, the highest grades, the most difficult college campus to come into, and yet their university leadership allowed them to be beaten by Zionists, and they resisted and fought back. Or in Sacramento, where I saw longtime fighters still fighting the good fight. And this is just a little of what I saw being built, what I personally saw being built in this campaign. Now I can't imagine what you saw, what you experienced, and how much you learned during this past year. And no one will take that from you. This is what we mean when we say we need to build, we need to organize. It is to be empowered to not only hope and dream, but learn how to make it real. And you made that possible. We made that possible. Throughout the campaign, I was humbled by the number of young people committing themselves to the Vote Socialist campaign. I always enjoyed checking in with the attendees and asking them, how did you hear about our campaign? Or how did you get involved with organizing? And it was so re-energizing to hear how much we and our stories connected in the journey of what we can call awakening, right? I remember my first protest. I remember my first opportunity to speak at a rally. I remember my first act of civil disobedience. And after being involved for so long, it allows me to then offer some perspective. It is an important experience to come to a protest with like minded people and hear strong conviction in the message for justice. Whether this past year you have attended a No Kings protest, the May Day actions, an anti ICE or pro immigrant rights actions, rallies, or a rally to demand an end to the genocide in Palestine and demanding a free Palestine. Listening to and among people who agree can feel very humanizing in a dehumanizing country like ours. We are so often isolated and made to feel alone. So the introduction to a movement is invigorating and hopeful. And then, after you attend many of these types of actions, you do begin to ask yourself, then what? What do we do? Do I just keep attending rallies? Do I just keep attending protests? I need to be more involved. I need to be more committed. And the exciting challenge of electoral politics, which you lived, is that you are no longer just joining the people that agree with you. You are no longer just talking to each other in a bubble. All those slogans, all those words that inspired people who were angry about the same thing, then the question becomes, how do we inspire others? How do we go visit their home? How do we go canvas? How do we pick up the phone and talk to someone on the other side who may be wanting the same thing? And that is what we did. We took the slogans and the knowledge of the people's movement and put them into a political program so that we can speak to our class, so that we can empower our class, and so that we can build the mass movement that was actually capable of transforming society. We cannot simply wish socialism into existence. And if the raw numbers show from last night, living in a dying empire does not mean that people know what they want or they know how to fight for an alternative. And you also have to know that based on those numbers, building an alternative is going to take a lot of work. And now imagine, and I'm not trying to be a downer, I'm not tend to be a negative person, but imagine if we took all this story and here in history and experiences and hopes and said everything should be electoral. Imagine the depression I would have today. Imagine if I only believed that the votes are what were going to change the system. And obviously, that's not the case. And while the last year I was a candidate for state superintendent of public instruction with the Vote Socialist campaign with our amazing candidates, I was also part of a union that led a strike for the first time in 50 years. I participated in marches against the war and for immigrant rights. And while that seems like a supernatural thing for one person to do, the truth is that none of it was done on our own. None of what I have experienced in this year is owned by myself as a person. It is part of the collective power and energy around us. And specifically, it is part of an organization. All of this is why I'm a committed member to the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I have been a member for over 15 years. I have experienced so many movements in such a short time, from Occupy, the student debt cancellation movement, the immigrant rights movement, anti-police brutality. Right? We fought to protect our people against COVID. We fought for the government to be accountable to serve our people. And every time there were organizers and branches making sure that we were having that message throughout not only the state of California, but around the country. That is the power of having a collective organization. And at the same time, the ruling class in those 15 years has offered nothing. Specifically, the Democratic Party has maintained the line that they are the only real alternative to our demise. And I first voted in 2004 for John Kerry, who lost to George Bush. And then I saw how Clinton tried to run against Obama, who was elected and told that we were finally saved. And then in 2012, the immigrant rights students fought for DACA and named Obama the deported in chief, who was then reelected for president from the Democratic Party. In 2016, I saw how Bernie was undermined despite being supported by thousands of young people who are seeking an alternative. And then you saw Biden and Trump and just the collective anger of people fed up with the two-party system. That is the trajectory that they are forcing us on. And yet here today on this webinar, you are seeing candidates looking to build an alternative. Brothers, sisters, siblings, you are living your own story. You have your own reasons why you know we must end capitalism and why we believe that socialism is the answer. There are many members in the Party for Socialism and Liberation who feel this and are committed to the struggle. It is why I invite you to join. We must be part of a collective. Revolutions or transformations in society are deeply, deeply collective. If you experience the strike here in San Francisco or in LA or anywhere else, you know this to be true. There are thousands of stories that will never be told, yet we achieved one outcome. And if you can't fully commit as a PSL member, join the PSL Action Network. Get involved into a community the way I experienced the community in Ventura, in San Diego, with good people, people willing to fight and commit their lives to the struggle. Don't forget what you've learned. Don't let the system rob you of your hope or make you think that you cannot fight for something better. Join us. Be as revolutionary as life itself. We will continue to see you in the streets. Congratulations to all the efforts. Great work. La lucha sigue, and we will win.
Let's give it up for Frank one more time, everyone. Thank you so much, Frank, for sharing your experience in the union struggle and how being a socialist in a party, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, was so instrumental to your political journey. I think we all know how capitalism affects us and our loved ones every day. And like Frank said, instead of feeling hopeless, we can come together to fight the system itself. Now, we've just heard from our amazing slate of candidates who are not just candidates, they're working class fighters, and they are organizers with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. After hearing those inspiring comments, now is the time for all of us to decide how we're going to move forward in the fight for socialism. I know not everyone here on this call might consider themselves an organizer at this moment, If you came into this movement through the election or recently, some of this might sound new, but an organizer is someone who talks to people around them in their communities, in their families, who gets to know their struggles and their ideas that we share and helps them see that they can take action. And organizers can do all of this with the support of an organization. So we want to tell all of you that every single one of us in this call can do that. You are capable of organizing for socialism every single day. And the organization that you can be part of to fight between election cycles is the PSL. So if everyone can take a moment to get out their phones, or if you're on your phone, get your friend's phone and scan that QR code that's on the screen right now. The links are also in the chat sent by tech. And go ahead and the QR code is actually a simple form if you want to fill it out quickly, and someone will contact you to talk more about what it's like to be in the PSL or the PSL Action Network. And the two links in the chat are for the PSL Action Network as well as the PSL. Now is the time for us to decide how we're going to move forward, what we're going to do between election cycles to make sure we're involved in struggles locally and statewide, make sure we're talking to working class people all around California and all around the country, and building a real independent alternative to Trump and the billionaire agenda. We all know we're here because we know the Democrats have not put up a fight against Trump. They have not put up a fight against the billionaires, and that's because they are also a party of the billionaires. So if you're here because you're looking for that alternative and you want to keep the fight going, the PSL is the organization to join. Hopefully everyone had a chance to get out their phones and scan that QR code and fill it out. It's really quick, I promise. Just takes a couple seconds, and all it means is that someone's going to get in contact with you to talk more about this. And in the chat, like I said, there are also links to join the PSL Action Network or join the PSL. We are now going to open it up for a short Q&A. So we'll leave this up for just a couple more seconds. But please spend the next 30 seconds or so entering your questions into the Q&A function if you haven't already. We've already been selecting questions for our candidates to answer. All right, let's go ahead and start the Q&A. Our first question is one for Ramsey, and they're asking, what do I say to people who tell me I wasted my vote by voting for you or the other socialist candidates?
Oh, goodness. Well, you can tell them unequivocally that they did not waste their vote. I mean, come on, y'all. We were able to take our explicitly socialist message that so many people in California are hungry for. I mean, 73% of Californians are demanding, saying that it's time for a third party. And we show them with this campaign that the Peace and Freedom Party is that party for us in California. And I mean, we've gone over the stats so much, but it bears worth repeating. We got 51,000 petitions, people to sign up and say, we want a third party on the ballot. We want our whole slate of socialist candidates to get some shine. We were able to mobilize volunteers out to knock on tens of thousands of doors. So in no way did we waste our vote. And we're part of this movement that's happening. And the Peace and Freedom Party, we've seen it right now. Like we've said, we are the fastest growing political party in California. So I think that speaks volumes to what we've done, what we've accomplished, and we're not going anywhere. So no wasted votes here.
Thanks, Ramsey. The next question is one that I think Frank can speak to really, really well. What can I do as a busy dad and sole income earner in my household to promote class consciousness and help build socialism?
First, a lot of respects to our class in what the many things that they have to deal with, everything. We often get told how we have to be productive and more capable, and everything's about us as individuals trying to do and solve the world's problems, right? Even I'll just say as a parent, I have a son, he's 5 years old. He has been a fixture of this campaign. It hasn't been anything separate. He's come to me with me at these events. He's learned the messages. He's listening to what people are saying. People are interacting. He's having the diversity of different age groups of just how diverse we really are as a society. And it's been very inspiring to have them. So one is there really isn't a separation between the politics and the life that we are having. In fact, probably, I'm sure you could share a story of why you are a busy dad, why you're having to work so hard in order to have an income to put a roof over your head, and all that is time taken away from the real life that your child is now growing and becoming, a person in the system. So I think it's more trying to really change the mindset away from all these things are separate, and also I only have to do these things on my own. I could not have done what I did without the party, without organization. In many times, and being fully transparent with you all, I was basically just showing up ready to talk. Everything was laid out by an organization, and everything was laid out by agendas, program, connections. All this made it possible. And this is why it's important for us as candidates not to be speaking as the representatives. We are a collective of individuals so that when you come in, you participate, your presence, your story is brought into the stories of others. And so having a single, a dad who's a sole income earner, that experience into the movement is key. You bring in what you can. In Spanish, we say something similar like un granito de arena. We are just but like, a speck of sand, and we all together then build a mountain. So make sure not to have that view. We have the PSL Action Network, which you can also is being placed in the chat. But the PSL Action Network is a really great way just to be part of a community that is learning, reading, getting links, inviting you to the march that you can probably attend. We have childcare at every single event. Your children can grow up also in the community environment, that we're, in a different type of environment because it's with children of parents who probably think like you as well. So I just think trying not to get disillusioned. The struggle is real. Just trying to survive day to day under capitalism is real. We don't have to do this alone. It's actually really beautiful when you find a community that you can build together.
Thank you so much, Frank. And like Frank said, you have the option to join the PSL Action Network and contribute to the movement for socialism in any way you can. And those links are being dropped in the chat again. The next question is, well, we've gotten a couple of questions actually about policy and specifically healthcare. So people are asking, what is our strategy to move the needle toward passing CalCare or universal healthcare in California? Because Kaiser and the other healthcare companies are extremely oppressive to working people and exploitative. And another question asks, what are some policy choices that the Ramsey Robinson campaign can use to provide meaningful change to the state in favor of the working class? So Ramsey, would you like to answer this question?
Oh, gladly. Yeah, so it was so many of our platform points. We never promise anything that we can't actually do. I mean, like for example, our employment platform, $30 an hour jobs, union jobs, and people, often ask like, well, where do you get that $30 an hour, uh, you know, number? And there's things on the books in California that we can actually do, like Labor Code 1170, that lets us, the state, set the wages for state public jobs. So. And healthcare is another one of those things. And I can say for sure that our research team is writing a paper right now, a white paper on how we can actually implement healthcare, universal and free healthcare to everybody in California that covers everything: mental health, dental, vision, reproductive care, gender affirming care. So again, we will continue to do this as well, even after the campaign is over, because it's so important that we show California that there are actual practical ways that we can implement all of our programs that we're suggesting. So just look out for these white papers that are coming, and that's another way that we can just move things forward with the struggle.
Thank you, Ramsey. We're getting some questions about the PSL, the Party for Socialism and Liberation. What does it look like to join the PSL, and what are the practical expectations? Lalo, would you like to answer that question?
Yes, I would love to. So I've been in the PSL since 2020. Would probably remember that year. It was the COVID year, but also George Floyd uprising, the fight against racism, really fight against the Trump administration, and the billionaire system. And really at the core of it, what it means to be in the PSL means that you're making a commitment to build socialism wherever you are, whatever space you have influence in. We are composed of students and teachers and workers from every industry you can imagine, with all kinds of backgrounds, life circumstances. And like how Frank was describing, it's about how you fit this commitment and weave it into your life. All of us who ran for office, we were all educators. Megan's a school bus driver. Alice Tech is a OBGYN. We all have like these demanding schedules, but we find ways to build socialism in our communities, at our workplaces, and we're also involved in people's movements, whether it's a local struggle against a landlord or it's against police brutality and ICE raids. Any issue that affects the working class, that's where we want to be, including the big issues of global war, Palestine, Iran. And so if you see, if you're looking at the counties of where we operate and you don't see your county or you don't see your township there, then you should definitely fill out an interest form and get in conversation with us about how we can start a PFP chapter. How can we start, bringing these politics to where you are? It's not so much about, people coming to the one thing. It's more so about spreading socialism, whether you're in a workplace or sports team. People are into like pickleball these days, like whatever, any place that you are organized with working people, that's where we want to bring the PSL and socialism as well, to bring about this change in society. So we'll still be canvassing, going to organizing meetings or hosting them, but we also want to train people to be leaders. So if you feel like you're not at a point right now where you can like do public speaking, things like that, you definitely will get that training in the PSL. It is a commitment, but it's one that is very rewarding, and yeah, I recommend it.
Thanks, Lalo, and definitely agree with everything you shared about what it's like to be in the PSL and how rewarding and fulfilling the experience is to fight alongside other working class people. Another question that's related, what is the difference between the Peace and Freedom Party and the PSL? And I think Megan would be really good to answer this question as a statewide officer for the Peace and Freedom Party and also a PSL organizer.
Thanks. And I think I think it is an important question, but to really highlight it, I mean, as we've said, is that the Peace and Freedom Party's been on the ballot in California for more than, I think it's almost 70 years now. Going from 68, maybe I'm doing my math wrong. My apologies. But it's the only socialist party that's on the ballot in California, and it's a great way for us to be able to fight within the electoral system. And it includes a broad coalition of socialist groups and individuals who are running as Peace and Freedom Party candidates, and not as the Democratic Party, as we all know how bankrupt that is. And so as socialists, it's rare for us to have that kind of ballot access that's independent from the two-party system. And it's something that, I've seen some of the questions come in there, is that it is really important for us to have this alternative and to be able to use the most of it. And I think especially like as we've seen here, is that this is a real opportunity, especially at election time, when people are asking questions and people are pay extra special attention during times of struggle and times of elections, to be able to talk about what's really going on in our communities and what our people really need and what we're not seeing. And I think actually from Lalo's talk earlier about really what difference it made to be able to talk in Altadena about the insurance companies and about the right that people should have to their homes, and to not be suffering from these crises that are created by the capitalists. And so I think so that's really what the Peace and Freedom Party is, and the real opportunity that it gives all of us for building socialism within our electoral arena. And it doesn't exist in most states. And it is a testament to the anti-war and civil rights movement of the 1960s that founded it. On the other side of this is that the PSL is a nationwide revolutionary socialist party. And it's existing to carry out the struggle for socialism within the US. So it's made up of leaders and activists, workers and students, And it's organized all across the country and not just in California. And so I know all of us on here are also members of the PSL. We're organizers and workers just like everybody who's on this call here. That, as Frank was saying, we dedicate our free time and our resources to organizing and building that mass movement and building class consciousness. So there are also branches that are across the nation, and that our members fight in both local, national, and international struggles in solidarity.
Thank you, Megan. What a clear answer. I want to move on to the next question, which is, what's the difference between voting socialists into office and having the working class in power, which is what the PSL is fighting for? And Lalo, would you like to answer that question?
I would love to answer that question. I think it really gets to the core of our specific outlook. And the thing is, what really makes us different from other parties is that we believe that uprooting this whole capitalist system is not just a pie in the sky idea. It's entirely humanly possible with the people and the resources that are in the United States right now. We can organize society around our needs, around the people's needs, around the planet's needs. But in order to do that, we have to go beyond having just, quote unquote, progressives in office. We have that now in some ways, not that they're perfect, but we've seen the promises and also the shortcomings of candidates like Bernie Sanders, like AOC. And I mean, those are two candidates that made me a socialist. They made me who I am today. But even with the election of Mamdani admits, there's only so much I will be able to do without a mass movement. As so far as the capitalist system continues to exist, we can get as many candidates as we want in there. We're always going to be negotiating the terms of our exploitation, the terms with the billionaire class who will ultimately be the ones that are still in power. So if we really want to overthrow the system, if we really want working class people in charge, it's not that it's a shortcut, but it's going to take a lot of work to really put the working class in power. We haven't seen what that really looks like yet. But if you want to know, I mean, we're really serious about making this happen. If you want to know how serious we are, we actually wrote a book about this. It's called Socialist Reconstruction. And it details what would a socialist working class government carry out in its first 10 years in power. And that's just an idea like to get the ball rolling. It's not even exhaustive. It's just like, here's one draft of what that would look like. But that's really what it comes down to. We have to take power away from the billionaires. Otherwise, it's going to be a constant negotiation, a constant battle with them. There's a short cartoon that I like to show my friends. It's called Mouseland. It's from a senator in Canada, but similarly, they were trying to build a third party. And the Mouseland kind of lays it all out. why in a cartoon way, but still very accurate way. Why it's not enough to just participate in the billionaire system, but to build one in the image of the working class.
Thank you, Lalo. And it's just like Lalo mentioned, we're not running an election so that we can just have a seat at the table that manages the capitalist system. We run in elections because we want to build a massive movement that can actually completely shift who is in power and who controls that entire table. And we want that to be the working class, not the billionaire class. We have a couple more questions, and I just wanted to say we're getting a lot of great questions in the chat. So definitely keep them coming. We're not going to get to all of them, but we will send out the answers to many of these great questions afterwards because we have everyone's email in their registration. The next question is again about PFP chapters, and I think Megan can answer this one. Can we expand on what opening PFP chapters in new counties looks like and what the process entails? The person who asked this question is in Santa Cruz County. Megan, go ahead.
Sure. And if I can do just one little quick throw into there, because I know there were also some questions about elections and unions. And as I think most people on here know, is that most of us are union members or officers. If you happen to be going to Chicago next weekend to the Labor Notes Conference, there's one that's actually on elections, and I'm going to be going there. And I'm not on the panel. I'll be speaking down there, but come find me. So you can find me in Chicago next weekend at Labor Notes, and we can talk about elections and unions. But so for adding on to this, I know Lalo touched on it a little bit. If you go onto the Peace and Freedom Party website, there's a link that's about getting involved there. That actually, when you fill that out, that sends an email over to us. I'm actually one of the North State organizers, so I saw the Solano and Santa Cruz. So right now, I would be getting your emails to be able to talk about it. But really, the start of it is getting some people together, just like we've talked about with everything else getting organized. We do it together. As Frank said repeatedly, it's a collective effort. And it's something for us to be able to try and help support, because as we said, we're throughout the Bay Area, throughout Northern and Southern California. And so getting some of your friends that want to be able to make a difference, that this is something, put it into there, talk about, say, hey, I want to build in this area. And reach out to us, and we're going to see how we can support and what is going on there, and what opportunities are for you to be able to both organize with your friends and be able to put something out publicly so that other people who are around in the community can join into this and be part of it. Just as I think we've seen throughout this entire campaign for all of us is, I feel like the biggest example was actually going up to Vallejo. I joined Ramsey and I went up to Vallejo a couple of weeks ago, and we were hosted by some guys that set up a media place, to be able to do music and media production. And they wanted it to be it was established as a community space that they said that they wish exist when they were kids, and that what we brought to their space and the people who turned out in Vallejo, they said, this is the kind of community we want to build. And so kind of, start small, start at what makes sense for you. But if you go onto that website and you say, I want to get involved, we're going to be able to follow up with you.
Thank you, Megan. It sounds like after this, we're going to see PFP chapters popping up all over the state, and a lot of PSL signups across the state as well. Excited for that. The next question is our last one, but like I said, keep your questions coming in the chat, and if we haven't answered them yet, we will send out answers to as many as we can over email. This last question is for our governor himself, Ramsey. Someone in the chat mentioned that they're going to be writing in Ramsey in November, and is wondering if we're going to push for others to do so as well.
Well, incredible question. I think that speaks to the hunger. Well, first, let me answer directly. We'll see about that. But I think the question really speaks to the hunger that folks are having to keep this momentum going. Obviously, these campaigns have been such a success in getting this socialist message out. And so I think in good faith, you're saying, how can we keep this rolling? And I would suggest that we take this momentum for write-ins and use it towards organizing. I love how Megan's talking about, let's use that energy for write-ins to start a PFP chapter. Let's use that energy to go to writings to join the PSL, because we know that there's more challenges that we're going to face that we're going to need to get organized for and get out in the streets. I mean, if you see what's just been happening since we've launched these campaigns, the war against Venezuela, the war against Iran, the peeling back of our voting rights, of women's rights. So these are all areas that I think we're going to need to channel this energy that we've built through these campaigns and put them into organizing so we can start to really feel our power that working class people have. So excellent question. And I think there's so much work to be done for organizing. Also in our unions, like Frank and Megan and Lalo are in unions. Let's organize in our unions. Let's organize in our tenant unions. There's so much work to be done. And I know that we're all down to do it. So looking forward to that.
Thank you, Ramsey, and thank you so much to all of our candidates for answering those questions. Thank you to all of you for being here, for asking questions, for engaging with us in this webinar, for all of those who are on this call that volunteered with our campaigns in the last several months. Thank you. This would not be in the place it is. This movement wouldn't be where it is without you. Thanks for everything you've done to make these campaigns a historic, and I mean that, truly historic achievement for socialism in California. We all know how hard the system is working to stop us from building this movement. We know how much the billionaires want us to believe that there is nothing we can do to change our lot in this society. But we also know that hundreds of thousands of people voted socialist in California this election. Thousands of volunteers door knocked and phone banked with us across the state. And so many more are looking for the answers to the questions that they have to deal with every single day. And they're not satisfied with the answers that they're getting from the Democrats or the Republicans. They're wondering, why does rent keep skyrocketing? Can I even afford to have a kid? What will I do if I get a huge medical bill? Can my family and I survive in this system another day? And the answer that we have is that we must replace capitalism with socialism in order for our communities and our planet to survive. Nobody else is going to give our people that answer and bring them with us except for us. So it is our responsibility, every single person on this call, to commit ourselves as much as we can, to contribute everything we can today and every day to the struggle for socialism in the US, for a world where our people can thrive, for a California and a country for the people, not the billionaires. So I want to let everyone know we have the QR code up on the screen one last time. Now is the moment to scan that QR code, to click that link, and to sign up to just have a conversation about what it would be like to join the PSL or the PSL Action Network. Last night, I was in a room with about 100 people on election night who had voted or volunteered for our candidates. And let me tell you, that room was different than much of the state because every single person was hopeful and excited for the future and what we're going to be able to build. And all of us deserve to feel that way, and we can. And joining the PSL is really one way to be organized with working class fighters just like yourselves. So let's keep building the socialist movement every single day. These campaigns were just the beginning. Let's do this, California. Thanks so much for joining us. Thank you to all of our candidates for your amazing comments, and we'll see you next time. The fight continues.